talk quickly, and I'll do that the other way around. I'm usually on my head anyways. I'm going to talk a little bit about town meeting. I'm going to talk generally first, and then a little bit about the Concord town meeting. I'm at the other end of the spectrum from Chuck. We're a relatively prosperous town in Concord, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston. We've had town meetings since the 1600s. Town meeting originally started in the 1600s with the males of the community who had land able to come together and vote the policies. There was a lot of discussion. The first town official was actually constables back in the 1960s, in the 1600s, because you were fined if you were a landed male and you didn't show up at town meeting, you were fined. So one way of getting participation is to fine the individuals who don't show up at town meeting. After the constable was appointed or elected, then there was the discussions became fairly rebellious, and you needed a moderator. So the moderator of the town meeting was the next official elected, and the third official was the assessor. And I've gone back into the Concord town records and seen that sequence. The town meetings became obviously very, very rebellious before the Revolutionary War, and the Brits, when they heard about these town meetings and the rebellious people participating, ordered the generals in Massachusetts to try and stop the town meetings, which of course just made all of us want to get together even more. After we became independent of the Brits, the Massachusetts Constitution wrote into the, or was written into the Constitution, the right of the individuals to elect as town meeting members. And it's part of our state constitution, as I suspect it is part of each one of the New England town meetings, New England constitutions. And as far as I know, New York has some town meetings, but that's about as far west as the town meeting system goes. In Massachusetts, there are two forms of town meeting. There's a representative form of town meeting and an open form of town meeting. We have 255 towns in Massachusetts. There are about 45 towns that are representative and the rest are open. Growing up in Concord, and clearly I haven't gotten anywhere in life, I thought that there was one way of running town meeting. Now I understand there are 255 ways of running town meeting. Because each town meeting really captures a culture of the community. And I'm interested to hear that those of you in Burlington thought of the town meeting process as how to get people involved with their governments, with your government, because it really does, it is a great system of getting people involved. The representative town meeting, generally those towns are 20,000, with a population of 20,000 and over, and open town meeting are towns 20,000 and fewer. That's very rough, but that's more or less where the breakdown comes. Of the 205, 210 towns that have open town meeting, the majority of those towns in Massachusetts have fewer than 5,000 people in the town. So we have a lot of towns who have very small town meetings. This is a process for an idea hatched around the dining room table and through the implementation of putting a new sewer system in your neighborhood. The idea comes up at the top, and the citizen then either goes to a town committee or a board. Individual citizen down on the left-hand side. By end of December, the idea needs to be formulated enough to be able to put it in writing, and that's when what we call the warrant is open. The warrant is the agenda for any one of our town meetings. We have, each town is required to have an annual town meeting in March, April, or May. This is a warrant, which is sort of the agenda for the town meeting. The warrant opens, at least in Massachusetts, at least in Concord, for about a week in December. The selectmen control the opening and closing of the warrant. If a citizen wants to have an idea put into the warrant, and I'm pleased to say in Concord we have roughly 5 to 9 citizen petitions each year, Obviously, the citizens think it's an open enough process so that they want to participate and bring their ideas forward. Some towns don't have that much participation, but I view that as a positive for Concord. And I should say that I'm going to talk a lot about what I am doing and what the town is doing. The town's been doing this for over 100 years, and this particular form of strong town managers government has been in place in Concord since 1956, and there have been 5 moderators ahead of me. Concord has a system of volunteer participation in our committees. The committees are term limited so that people fill out a green card, put it into the townhouse, and they list what committees they want to volunteer on. They get placed onto a committee either by the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, or the town moderator. Each of us have our authority of appointment. But they can only serve for 2 terms, and then they have to get off, and new people get on. And I strongly believe in that system because it rejuvenates the committees and rejuvenates the whole political process within the town. So the idea comes down and it gets put into the warrant, and the warrant closes in early January, and then we hold, it gets put out in a booklet like this, and this booklet gets delivered to each one of the houses and residential addresses in Concord. So we're all about communicating and getting information out to the residents. And we are one of 11 towns in Massachusetts that does that. Most towns, you pick up the warrant as you go into the town meeting, but we feel it's very important to get the information out to the voters. Once that gets out, it has a list of the public hearings right on the front page, and that's in this stage here. That hearing process is not as good as I would like it to be, and I'm working, yesterday morning I sat down with a Finance Committee person and the Board of Selectmen, and we will get the school committee involved for the discussion too. As Chuck said, the participation in the hearing process is truly reflective of the chair. And if the chair wants to have dialogue and wants to have people come out and participate, he or she can make that happen. And these hearings are televised. We try and again get information out. And if the population sees the chair, and this conservative who ran against me for moderator was chair of the Board of Selectmen before that race, he at one point, we have 3 or 4 individuals who perpetually bring in articles. And at one point, this petitioner was trying to answer some questions from the Board of Selectmen, and she was going to say something that this particular chair of the Board of Selectmen didn't want her to say. He reached for the microphone to grab it out of her hand and said, "This is my microphone," sort of like a former president. And where the hearing had been maybe neutral, certainly wasn't in favor of this petitioner's article, in a minute or a second, in that second, the hearing switched and became supportive of the petitioner and what she was trying to accomplish. So it really depends upon the chair of the hearings, and I'm going to try and work with our chairs over the next couple of years to get the word out that these hearings are open and we need to get people to participate in those hearings. After the hearings, then the Board of Selectmen makes their recommendation, the Finance Committee makes their recommendation, and the Planning Board makes their recommendations. Those recommendations go into what's called the Finance Report. This is a Finance Committee report. It's an extremely well-written report on the budget. Our total budget is $62 million. The discretionary part of that is about $50 million, which is a fairly large portion of it. We started on Thursday night. We started the budget process for this year. The Finance Committee meets over the course of the summer and does an orientation for any newly elected people in town. And we have very few elected people in town. We have a school committee of 5 people. We have a Board of Selectmen of 5 people. We have a housing authority of 7 people. One of those is appointed by the governor. And we have a town moderator. And everybody else is appointed. The Finance Committee goes back during the months of September and October and comes up with guidelines for both the school committee and the town budget, operational budget, to try and hit as to an increase. We think that they say, well, we think there'll be an increase of 3% or 4% over last year's budget. So that's what you have to work with, and then the school committee and the town manager goes and puts their own budgets together and comes back around January. And in January, that actually goes to our finance committee, and the finance committee starts massaging it through this hearing process. And so that by the time it gets to town meeting, it's been there have been at least 2 hearings. Some of those are what in today's vernacular are theme hearings, and others are department hearings. Then after the town meeting, of course, it goes to the town manager and the department heads, and it gets implemented down here. So that's...
Let me interject one thing. If I recall correctly...
David came to one of our sessions last spring, so
yeah.
he has been there.
In Porto Alegre, after the Council of the Budget makes its decisions, it gets reviewed, at least informally, by all of the district assemblies.
But it doesn't get voted on.
Doesn't, well, it doesn't, no, it can't be formally changed at that point, but there could be votes expressing resolutions.
Sure,
or something.
sure. Well, both systems work.
This is a very good example, thank you.
Let me just...
How do you manage the 1,200 person vote?
Thank you.
Very well, he would say.
I'm sure. That's learned.
That's why he's been the moderator.
Some moderators do it better than others. Some sessions work better than others, and each town meeting is different from any other town meeting. I ran a town meeting on schools 2 summers ago, on August 8th. This is our high school. Air-conditioned auditorium. Very hot cafeteria, blazingly hot gymnasium. August 7th, everybody in Concord goes to Vermont, up to Burlington for a vacation, or Cape Cod. I asked 25 people, how many people are going to come out for this town meeting, special town meeting on schools? 250 people max, 600-seat auditorium. So, easily we can fit in here. That's air conditioned, don't need to set up the cafeteria. Well, I actually, because I'm required in Massachusetts, each moderator controls the space for the town meeting and is responsible for that space. I put a single microphone in here. But ordinarily, you ask how we connect. Ordinarily, I'm up at a podium here, and there are TV screens on either side here. There's a camera here. There's a screen here with two TV screens here, 2 TV projectors, cameras there, with microphones there. And in the gymnasium, if we think there's going to be an overflow, we have a screen here, and this is 800, this is 400, and this is about 1,000. I luckily have not had to, ordinarily we fit into these 2 spaces here. And our systems are such that we have an assistant moderator here. I moderate here. We're connected by a telephone. I have a monitor here that I look at to see if people are standing at those microphones. I ask the assistant moderator in the cafeteria to have the person identify themselves at microphone number 5 or microphone number 6. They identify themselves, they have to give their street address. I have the town clerk sitting right next to me. If the street address isn't one that we recognize, she will look in our directory to try and find out if it's a registered voter. Very rarely do we have an issue like that. So that's how we do it. It works. It's been working this way for about 10 years. We used to have a state armory that we all fit into, but the state said we couldn't do that anymore.
Wow. How do you count the vote?
The hall is divided up into, this is divided up into 6 sections. This is divided up into 4 sections. This is divided up into 2 sections. We have 2 counters for each section. And ordinarily, on 80% of the votes in Concord are by either voice vote or hand vote, holding up the ballot. Everybody is checked in. As they come into the high school, they're checked in by tellers who work for the town clerk. You have to give your name and address. You're given a ballot. And the ballot has 3 tear-off ballots if we have to do a written vote. But ordinarily, 80% of the votes are just a show of hands, and the moderator calls it. And believe me, no moderator is ever going to call it wrong. If it is at all close, I say we have to have a counted vote. So then we do a standing vote, and sometimes I do a standing vote just to give people exercise and get them out of their seats. No, seriously, people get tired sitting for 2 hours, as you are today. So.
It's okay to stand during this session.
Absolutely, please do. So we have everybody in favor of an article stand and raise their ballots, and they have to have a ballot in their hand. And the tellers will go up, then those people sit down, everybody opposed to an article stand up, and the tellers will recount, then they take their count to the head clerk, and the head comes in from the cafeteria, and that gets tabulated. And a paper ballot, if we want to do it by what's called secret ballot, and it takes a long time, and we used to have 25 voters able to get a secret ballot. Now it takes 50 voters. Some people are pushing for higher, but there are some issues, and as I go to other towns and see other town meetings face these issues, in some towns we don't vote by line item on the fire department salary or the police department salary, but in some town meetings I do, and I was aghast to hear about it, but now I've seen it. So I've seen police departments come and stand in the back of the room to watch votes. And so I can understand how they want to have a secret ballot in that case, and there are some emotional issues that, so we do, I've probably conducted 1 or 2 secret ballots over each year over the last 5 years. Let me talk very briefly about participation, and then I'll sit down. When I came on board, we often, by the end of a town meeting, any particular session, we start at 7:30. We start at 7. We used to start at 7:30. We moved it up half an hour, and we don't take up any article after 10 o'clock. So the voters know that they can go home, usually by 10:20, 10:30. And be home and be able to get to work the next day. Towards the end of those sessions, our numbers, like at a quarter of 10 or so, sometimes they're down below 800. When I first came into office, I said, okay, it's going to be much more efficient to bring the people from the cafeteria in here. And so for a couple times I tried to close the cafeteria and have all the voters come together in the auditorium at the end of the session. There was rebellion, absolutely. People in the auditorium, to exert the rights of the people in the cafeteria, would get up from their seats and go into the cafeteria.
Oh my goodness.
So I said, okay, let's not fight it. I also was elected on a platform where I wanted to start our town meeting on Saturday, because Lincoln, a neighboring town, starts their town meeting on Saturday, and a lot of towns do it, and it's a very collegial community activity. And I thought Saturday would be a terrific time, because we have a synagogue in town. It didn't pass, and it was a little bit like asking the choir to change their choir night from Thursday night to Tuesday night by asking our town meeting members, or not members, but our participants in town meeting, whether they would do a Saturday session. I put this article forward the second year I'd been elected. There were about 3 of us voting in favor of it, so it was roundly defeated. So I said, okay, I want some social aspect of our town meeting. If they're not going to close the cafeteria, let's build up the cafeteria. So I started asking the high school students to sell food half an hour before the town meeting started, and I started talking up having dinner on your way back from Boston or your office with your spouse and other voters here in the cafeteria. And so instead of now trying to close the cafeteria, I'm trying to expand it. And some night I may be brave enough to say, okay, let's all move into the cafeteria. And maybe people will follow me. I also have been running with the town clerk and a former school teacher a session, a workshop on town meeting, because I think one of the strongest items of that a citizen doesn't come out to a town meeting is they don't know what the procedure is and they're scared of the process.
Yeah.
And probably at the hearings in Boston, they know the same thing. So I've been working on a workshop for the voters, and we get 20 to 40 people. It was written up in Newsweek. Someone out in Minnesota saw it, and I got word Perry's in Newsweek this week. But that activity has been picked up by the voters, and they seem to like it. I'm now working on a videotape with other moderators in Massachusetts, so that we'll have a half-hour tape for on-town meeting. 15 minutes will be on the background of town meeting, and then 15 minutes will be either on an open town meeting if the town has open, or on representative town meeting if the town has. So it'll be a 45-minute tape, but it'll be able to be cut to 30 minutes because that's what cable really looks like. So I'm doing that. I have gone out into the schools because I'm trying to train the school kids to think about town meeting. And I ran into trouble by going to a preschool sort of daycare center. And we had a vote at the end of my little presentation, which lasted about 3 minutes. We had a vote as to whether the snack the next day would be ice cream or cookies. And apparently the next day, someone came in and said, "Teacher, I couldn't vote because neither of those options were healthy snacks." So, I'll be glad.
Take some apples home with you.
Yeah, take apples. I'll be glad to answer any questions, but that's probably more than you wanted to know about town meeting.
Surprised they didn't insist upon both ice cream and cookies.
If I'd been there, it certainly would have been voted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Comments, questions?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to know how many people came out to that August meeting on the school board.
At 10 minutes past 7, when we were, we got underway at 7. And where are we? One more. At 10 minutes past 7, I had the town clerk tell me how many people had been checked in, and it was about 280 people. I had someone check the parking lots, plenty of room in the parking lots. So I said, oh, good, it's great. Because our town meeting sessions have a little bit of Foley roll in the beginning, some people don't, we have Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts come down with the American flag, and I have a one-page statement that I read about everybody needing to keep the whole town in perspective and not vote just for our own interests. And it's a moving passage, and we silence the hall for it. But it's an introduction. And so by 8 o'clock, when we were getting into the articles, there were about 950 people. And we had 150, or actually probably 250 people sitting in the cafeteria. They had one microphone. We were connected. We were operating legally. They were sweltering at 8 o'clock. We were feeling very comfortable. The session actually had 7 warrant articles, and they were all interrelated. And so we needed to have everybody vote on the first article as well as on the 9th article, because the 9th article would have allowed the town meeting to go back and readjust based upon the votes on the first 8 articles. It took a long time that evening. It was a hot evening. We outdid the air conditioning about 10 o'clock, and it became sweltering here. By this time, the air was moving through the cafeteria. And it was wonderful. They had the windows open, the doors open. It was great in there. We were sweltering. I kept my coat, and David, I usually have a coat and tie. And I kept my coat on, and everybody in here said, I was told afterwards, they said, if the moderator can stand this heat with his coat and tie on, we can stay here in our seats. At 12:15, 15 minutes after midnight, when we voted on the last article, there were 948 votes counted.
Wow.
And so the people had understood, number one, that they had to stay there because things could be changed on the last warrant article. But they stayed there through all that heat and through the process. as I said, we ordinarily adjourn at 10 o'clock and go the next night, but in a summer session like that for a special town meeting, people had come back from vacation to vote. They allowed for one night, so we suspended those rules. We agreed that we would stay there until the end that night. And we were just fortunate that people were willing to, I was fortunate. A lot of people thought that I would have strong opposition this last March after that town meeting, but nothing developed. Our ordinary town meeting runs 4 to 5 nights, and for one reason or another, I was able to get our town meeting done in 3 nights this April, and everybody thought it was a great town meeting. I don't necessarily think that that's a great form of democracy, pushing articles through. I did go up to Harpswell up in Maine and saw, after the LNG issue actually, the LNG vote was a ballot vote on Wednesday. I went to the town meeting the following Saturday. And the moderator did a terrific job of pushing through about 43 articles in an hour and a half. And he did it, he was at the podium here, first selectman was there, second selectman was there, town manager over there, about 250 people out, all with their yellow cards in front of them. He would say, this is an article on snow plowing on the southern point. Is there a motion? First selectman would raise his hand. And is there a second? Second selectman would raise his hand. He'd look out to the audience and say, is there any discussion? Seeing no one at the microphone says no discussion. All those in favor say aye. Hold up your ballot. Any opposed? 2 or 3. Next article. And he just went 1, 2, 3 right down through it. To avoid that type of procedure in Concord, we have established what's called the consent calendar, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with here. And the consent calendar takes the most mundane articles, which we have to vote on every year by statute, but that usually don't have any discussion. And I put those on a consent calendar. We've been doing it 7 or 8 years now.
A reform
My
was
predecessor
by Terry
started.
DeRiso in Burlington City Council.
Did you adopt that?
Yeah, actually, I don't think it was.
Wasn't you?
I think, no.
And it works, because it really gets rid of a lot of the more mundane articles. It allows me to really broaden the discussion. The best town meeting I've felt that I moderated had to do with buying open space for water rights, going back to the water right issue. And that we were buying a farm that had only been in 2 families since the king.
Wow.
And one of the owners, the most recent owner had left and gone to Maine, but he came back for this town meeting. And I saw him coming up to a microphone. He was a maniac by this time, by his dress and demeanor. And he identified himself and he said, "May I speak?" And you could have heard a pin drop in that town meeting for the next 20 minutes as he talked about the love of the land and what his family had done to farm it and how pleased he was that the town was buying it for open space for the wells. And that is the quintessential town meeting as far as I'm concerned. Being able to communicate like that, one-on-one, 1 to 1,000 people, and have everybody wrapped attention to that speaker. And if I could do that on all the articles, I would feel that I was a particularly successful moderator. And I try and listen, and I think a moderator needs to listen more than speak. So I will sit down and listen.